So I'm going to talk today about Taiko, reliable browser automation tool. First, I would like to thank QA Babble for letting me conduct this meeting. I think thanks Matt, thanks Anthony for arranging this session for everyone. I also want to thank Team Taiko. So it's a completely open source tool, and whatever I've learned is through the community and interacting with the people behind the tool. So, what is Taiko? Taiko is basically a node library with a clear and concise API to automate Chromium browsers. So, it means any browser that runs on Chromium will be able to use Taiko for the browser automation. So let's quickly talk about the agenda. So I'll talk a bit about myself, what are end-to-end tests, what is Taiko, why JavaScript, test framework, comparison with other tools, limitations, demo, conclusion, and references in the end. Um, so I currently have about 13 years of experience in the software testing industry. I've tested web, mobile, and desktop applications and worked in large enterprises and startups. I worked for companies like Novoda, Odgers Berndsen, Rail Delivery Group, Privax, and Tata Consultancy Services over my 13 years of testing career. So now let's talk about uh, end-to-end browser tests. So Martin Fowler, he has, written this that user journey tests are a form of business-facing test designed to simulate a typical user's journey through the system. Such a test will typically cover a user's entire interaction in the system in order to achieve some goal. They act as one path in a use case. Now, this use case could be going to, say, eBay, looking for an item, putting it into your basket, checking it out, making the payment. So that's an end-to-end test. Now, what are the challenges with end-to-end browser test at the moment? Currently, it takes a lot of time to execute because you have a whole user journey spanning across multiple pages with different elements. Plus, it's not part of development cycle because of all the focus on unit test and API testing and other testing. End-to-end browser tests are generally not the focus, and they're flaky because the elements on the page can fluctuate and keep changing with development. And also, it's tough to read or modify because you will have to do automation using some programming language, say Java or C Sharp or Ruby or whatever tool you want to use. So, what's the goal of a end-to-end browser test? The goal is basically to simulate a real user scenario from start to finish. So basically, that means is that we have to go from one state to another state and follow the entire journey and see what happens. Okay. Okay. So Taiko, introduction. So it's a free and open source browser automation tool built by Thoughtworks. And Thoughtworks itself has a great open source history because they were actually the people who actually created Selenium that we are all familiar with. They were also the people who came out with WebDriver, and WebDriver combined with Selenium became Selenium WebDriver, and WebDriver is currently a W3C standard. So, what does taiko mean? Taiko actually is a Japanese barrel-shaped drum, and I will slowly come to what it means. Uh, my first experience was actually also in a meetup. I attended a ThoughtWorks meetup last year, where Scott Davis, the web architect and principal engineer at ThoughtWorks, gave a talk on Gauge and Taiko, and that's how I got familiar with the tool, and that's how I started looking into what it is and how I can use it for automating things. It was also featured in the Technology Radar. So Technology Radar is something that ThoughtWorks produces every year, twice a year actually, and they talk about the latest technology trends on techniques, tools, platforms, and frameworks. And they have actually mentioned Taiko in their April 2019 edition. So what was Taiko actually inspired by? Taiko was actually inspired by Puppeteer, which we all know. Again, it's an open source tool. And it was also inspired by this Python library called Helium. Now, this is quite interesting. I mean, you can see that you are just typing something. It's in the REPL mode, uh, and it opens Chrome. So it's quite interactive. And then you write something into the username field, and you write something in the password field, and then you click the button, click sign in, and that's it. So as you can see, this is quite interactive, and Taiko got inspired by these two projects. So what does Taiko actually do? So as you can see here, it's again, this is Taiko. You open the browser, you click, you say go to google.com, write something, and click or press the enter key, and then click on this particular link, and it's identifying using the text, and then you can close the browser. So Taiko is a Node.js library, as I've already mentioned. So you can find it on the npm JS website, and you can download it using the npm install command. So it's pretty straightforward, and you can start automating immediately. So as I mentioned, it uses the Chrome DevTools API protocol and is built for testing the modern web applications. Now, what this means is any browser that supports Chromium, Taiko can interact with it, and Taiko can automate them. So that's actually quite a lot of browsers in the market currently. It also has a lot of plugins. So you have plugins for accessibility, Android diagnostics, screencasting, storage, and many other plugins. So that's also quite good, because then you can extend the features and functionalities of Taiko with all these plugins. So that's again a good thing. Plus, all these plugins are also open source and available via the Node npm JS website. A sample example. So this is Taiko on Android. So you create the test, and now you can see that this is the Android device, and the test is starting. So basically what will happen is it will open Chrome browser. So waiting. So yeah, it opened Chrome browser. It will navigate to a page, and it will do some functions. Yeah. So navigated to github.com, navigated to the user login page, entering the username, entering the password. So as you can see, it works on multiple platforms, which is quite good. Now, how it does? It does this by using smart selectors. So write test scripts by looking at a web page without inspecting its source code. So traditionally, whenever we try to automate something, we try to first identify the element, say using CSS selector or XPath, and then we try to perform an action on it. But in Taiko, the advantage is that whatever you see on the page, you are trying to automate that. So if you see a text, say Google, so you say click Google or highlight Google, it will do that for you. Implicit weights. So scripts written in Taiko are free of explicit local or global weights and the flakiness. So in most of the scripts that we are currently using, we have to define explicit weights, like wait for this much time, wait this or wait that. In Taiko, it will actually wait for a particular action to finish and then move on to the next step. So, but in some cases where you actually want to define the weights, you can actually do that as well. So there is an option where you can actually explicitly define wait for, and it will wait for that particular duration of time. But by default, you don't actually have to define it, and the script will run as is whenever you execute it. Also, it's got an interactive recorder. So as I showed on the Helium version, it opens a REPL mode. And what that means is you can type a code and see what's happening in the browser. Now, this is quite powerful because traditionally we have to write the whole code, then run the code, and then see what's happening in the browser, then go back to the code, modify it, and then run everything again from the start. But in Taiko, because it runs in the REPL mode, you can type a command and see exactly what's happening in the browser. In the demo, I will show you how it works. You can also do request and response stubbing with it. So you can actually intercept something, say a URL, and then you can redirect the user to some other URL. So you can also do that. So that helps with mocking and stubbing. So some of the acronyms that were mentioned in the slide, I've just highlighted it for everyone's reference. XHR stands for XML HTTP request. So you want to update parts of a web page without reloading the whole page. And REPL stands for read, eval, print loop. So it takes a single user input, executes them, and returns the result to the user. Now, why JavaScript? I mean, why not say C Sharp or Java or Python, which is quite popular with these days? So the reason is, I mean, what's the current state, browser automation state? It's that everyone is using Java, Python, Ruby with Selenium, and it really felt that there is no good alternative to this setup. But alternatives have come out now. So you have Cypress, you have Puppeteer, you have many other things that are not following the conventional standard. But what are the benefits of using JavaScript? Because JavaScript is already in the browser. So browser has HTML, it has CSS, and it has JavaScript. So you can actually play with all the elements of a page using JavaScript. Plus, there is the Electron. So a framework allowed to wrap a browser inside a JavaScript engine. So a lot of applications are now Electron based. So you can interact with them. Plus, it uses Chrome DevTools protocol. It's a non-W3C standard. So compared to WebDriver standard, it's not a W3C standard, but it's quite popular and it's very uh, good if you want to automate Chromium browsers. So now what would a sample test framework with Taiko look like? So suppose you want to implement Taiko in your current organization as an automation framework, what would that framework look like? So you can use any of these programming languages, JavaScript and TypeScript. So you can actually use TypeScript for Taiko, and you can write a script and save it and then run it using Taiko. You will have any of the test runner, Gauge, Mocha, Jest, or any other things. I've not mentioned all the test runners here, but I've mentioned some of the compatible tools with Taiko that have worked, and you can find the examples in their documentation website. And then, of course, you will use the Node.js library Taiko in order for your framework to work. You will use the Chrome DevTools protocol, and you can use any of these Chromium browsers. So as I mentioned, you can automate any of the Chromium browsers, which are Chromium, Chrome, Edge, Opera, Brave, and Vivaldi. So as you can see, you can support a lot of browsers and do your cross-browser testing. It can work on Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Jenkins, Docker, Raspberry Pi, Android. So wherever you can run Node.js, you can run Taiko. It's essentially that simple. And any of the front JavaScript frameworks. So it's not specifically built to tackle, say, Angular, Vue, or React. It can work with any of the front end frameworks, which is quite good. Now coming to the tool comparison. How does Taiko compare with other browser automation tools? Browser automation tool. So this comparison actually done by Thoughtworks and published last year. So they analyzed this tool in comparison Selenium, WebDriver, TestCafe, Cypress, Puppeteer, and itself. And most of the things it scores quite high, but Puppeteer is also quite fast. As you can see the script, Selenium and WebDriver score high on the cross-browser supports and the number of languages because Tycho only supports JavaScript, but the test integration framework is also quite high. So that's quite good. But what are the competition? I mean, currently there are so many automation tools in the market, and as a test engineer or automation expert, whenever you want to go into the market to pick up a tool, you have so many tools to pick up for, and you sometimes wonder which is the best tool. So you have Selenium, you have WebDriver, Cypress, Puppeteer, CodeCept, Nightwatch, Backstop for visual regression, TestCafe, Protractor. This is Playwright, and then TestProject. So you have so many tools which are there. So why would I recommend to use Taiko? But before we go to the demo, I just want to talk about the limitations as well. Taiko does have some limitations. It doesn't support C Sharp, Java, Python, or Ruby. So suppose you already have an existing framework, your devs all already use C Sharp, Java, Python, or Ruby, then unfortunately you can't. But you can still start very quickly to build a new framework using Taiko. The current browsers which are not supported are Internet Explorer, Firefox, and Safari. Now, Firefox is actually going to support Chromium in the future. So that's, I think, it's a very limited set of browsers that are not supported. Majority of the browsers are still supported. Microsoft has moved Edge to Chromium, so that's a very good news for the industry, because then we don't have to do a lot of rewriting of the code just to enable cross-browser support. And it doesn't support iOS at the moment. So let's go to the demo. So let me open Visual Studio Code, and let me open the terminal. So in order for you to install Taiko, you run the command npm install -g Taiko. So if people can't see, so yeah, it's downloading the Taiko. Let me zoom this a bit. Yeah. So it's downloading Taiko library, and it's also downloading the latest Chromium version, and I'm installing it globally. I've already created some scripts, and these are all available in my GitHub repo. And I've tried to automate some of the websites like BT, Compare the Market, Google Search, Internet Heroku website, Lighthouse Report, Rafa, Skyscanner, and some other websites. So let's see what happens. Waiting. Okay. Should work. Okay. If it's not. Anyway, let me open a new terminal. Let me just go to the REPL. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's see if it's done. Still waiting. System a bit slow, but I've already installed it, so not a problem. So you type Taiko in your command line or terminal or wherever you want to use it, and then you just type open browser. It opened this one. So let's say go to google.com. Let's say go to bt.com. So as you can see, the page, once it loaded, then only it gave the pass. So it actually waited for the page to load completely. So let's say I want to click this OK button, this one here. Uh, Bear in mind, I am coding as well as trying to see if it works. So let's see what happens. Click OK. Wow, it identified the element and then it clicked. And then it reloaded for some reason. But see, it waited for the page to reload complete, and then. So now if I want to click broadband and then maybe click on fiber broadband, so what do I have to do? So let's say click broadband. And then click fiber broadband. And the B is small, so let's see what happens. So it identified the element, and then it went to that page. It's not shown a pass yet. The page is loaded. It's shown a pass. So let me click this, see broadband deals. So you can see what's happening here. This is how a user would interact with the system. It's not how the program is interacting. It's how the user is interacting. The user is interacting with what the user sees on the page. So if I see something on the page, I can interact with it using smart selectors. But if I don't see something on the page which is hidden, I can then use XPath or CSS selectors. So that's actually quite useful. So now let's say click see broadband deals. And whenever it identifies, it highlights the element. in red. You must have seen this. This was already red, so we were not able to see this. Now, see, the page loaded and then it showed pass. So it waited automatically. We didn't have to say, okay, wait for this much time or this and that. Now let's see, click check availability. Availability. Wow. And then let's say I want to write a text. So write. So I'll give a postcode. I'll give my postcode into text box and I'll say postcode. Let's see what happens. So I told Taiko to write this particular text into the text box postcode. I didn't give any selector. I didn't say use this XPath or that XPath. There was no CSS defined. I just said there is a text box on the page which is under postcode with a label postcode, and then just write that text, and it did it for me. And then I say click check availability again. So now here it's trying to find the address. Let's say click 55. Let's see what happens. So, or say let's click 15. Okay. So it's not able to identify 15. So it'll wait for some time. It will automatically time out. So let's say 15 Eden Road. I think that's more clear. Yeah, it identified the element and it clicked, it selected, and let's say click confirm address. I think someone has already asked what if there are other broadbands. So words. So you have smart selectors. I can share. I can show what I've done in the scripts. So basically, this is an end-to-end test. So suppose tomorrow you want to see whether you are able to see the packages for fiber for a particular address. You can code using this. Now another thing is, what about the script itself? Suppose I want to see what the script would look like for this end-to-end scenario. I use something called dot code. So dot code will generate the entire code for me of whatever has passed. Click 15 did not pass, so it's not there in my code. So it has actually generated the code for me. Open browser, go here, do this, click that, write this, click, and then this is using a traditional try catch block. And it says use these APIs from this library, which is Taiko. Okay. So, and if I want to export this, so say dot code, and I want to put it in a file, say bt.com.js. So it has put everything in that particular file, in a JavaScript file. And let's see what has happened. So it created this file, bt.com.js. And it's created this JavaScript file, and I can now work with it. Now you can also pass some arguments. Say you want to run this in headless, not in headless mode. You want to actually see what happens when the code is actually running. So let me close this session and let me come out. So I'll come out by saying dot exit. Yeah. And then I want to run this particular file, bt.com.js. So I just type Taiko bt.com.js. I'm using PowerShell, so it's a bit different. And so let's see what happens. Okay, so sorry, it opened the browser in a different window. So it went to bt.com, it clicked OK, it clicked. Now you see there is an error. The script is not able to execute. Now, why is that? Because when we interacted in the interactive mode, we had some time, and Taiko does not know that the page has reloaded. So it will give a timeout. It'll say it's not able to identify the element. Yeah, navigation took more than 30,000 milliseconds and we are not able to execute. So, I mean, let's remodify the script. So I've already done it. And here is the script. So what I've done is I've told it to wait for events DOM content loaded. I didn't say wait for 300 milliseconds or wait for 100 milliseconds. I just said wait till the entire DOM content is loaded. And because whenever I click OK, the page refreshes. So it has to wait for the entire DOM content to load and then identify where the element is and then click on it. So let me run this script now. Okay. Okay, my computer is having some memory issues. Let me kill this, and then type new terminal. Yeah, Taiko bt.js. Let's open this here in my other screen. So let's see what's happening. It clicked OK. It's quite fast actually. Um, so it wait for the DOM content to load. Click on broadband. Click on fiber broadband. See broadband deals. It's clicked that. Scrolled to fiber 2. Add continue. Write this. Check availability. Wait for it. 55 Eden Road. Confirm address. Taken a screenshot of this page and saved it. Okay, so all this is done. So there was a question in the chat of what if there are multiple broadband. So I've actually said, so here, wait for events. See here, await, click add and continue below fiber 2. So suppose there are add and continue text under which is repeated in the page, you can actually say click this text which is below this text. That's it. So even if there are multiple pages, then you can identify the elements and click on it. Let me run another script, and this is for redirect. So this script, what it does is, you define an intercept, say google.com, and redirect it to bing.com. So when you go to google.com, it will actually go to bing.com instead of google.com, and you can verify this by getting the current URL, and then you actually go to sos.com, and then execute. So let's see what happens. So I run this script. Sorry, it always opens in the different screen. So intercept opened, added, navigated to URL google.com, but we know that it actually went to bing.com because we got the current URL, and we closed it, and it navigated to ss.com. It said that, and the browser was closed. That's quite interesting. So what else can it do? So I've actually played around with it quite a lot, and Internet Heroku website. Now, this website is quite popular for testing whether your automation tool can interact with different types of elements, say authentication, elements in a table, drop down, and upload a file, JavaScript alerts, menu, iframes, and other things. So, because we are not using the backend code or the HTML code to actually identify the element. It doesn't care whether it's iframe, so it will handle iframe directly. It can handle images, drop down, clicks, and other things. So I've actually mentioned all this in the script, and it's all available in my GitHub page. I actually wanted to show you this script, compare the market, which I did recently. And this is quite an interesting thing, because I'm going to compare the market and trying to get a quote. And this is a very complicated user journey where there are a lot of elements, where I have to write so many text, and I've tried to automate that. So every time I want to get a quote, I change this and I can get a new quote. And as you can see from the code, it's highly readable. I'm not saying use that CSS selector or this or that. I'm saying write 55 into text box this, or write BR34S into postcode, and then it will handle all the drop down. I'll basically just run this code now so that everyone can see, and then we can go on to Q&A and other things. So let me just run this script. And this is a very complex, long end-to-end journey. It's the code is less than 100 lines for this complete end-to-end journey. Just type a random name, car registration, type the current value, next. I've not used any CSS selector except one element. All done is click this, click that, do that. So you can see that this is a drop down and it's interacting with it. So it's selecting the date of birth. So you can see different elements on the page. I can quickly, it's interacted with the checkbox. Drop down, software. Because it is so easy, it did not take me much time to actually script this. Because I didn't have to go in the back end and say, okay, another thing is you notice that there are no multiple times no. So I have to actually tell it which no to click. And I can define that. Selected 20th June. Okay. Gave some error. Drop down with label. Do you have this will be detailed? Not found. Okay, so that drop down might have changed, so it's not found. So it gave an error. But the basic idea is that I have not used any CSS locators or XPath locators to create a script. I've said click this, what the user can see, and I think that's quite intuitive because I've written a lot of text here, hardly any code, and most of it is drop down to right off, to left off, or and select that particular option in that drop down. So it's quite intuitive that way. So now let's go back to the presentation. So as I've mentioned, all the scripts that I've played with using this tool, I've uploaded it in my GitHub repo. So anyone can refer to this. And if you have any questions, you can ask me directly. I'll give an email. But these are all the scripts that I've played. And I've tried to play with different complex sites like BT, compare the market. I'm currently working on Google Flights. I've done Skyscanner, but Skyscanner production side, it works one time, but then it identifies that it's an automated bot, so it doesn't work the next time. So that's something that you might have to worry about or think about. Sorry, but Skyscanner works. I've literally gone into Skyscanner, entered the departure airport, arrival airport dates, selected number of passengers, added few bags, added adults and kids, selected direct flights only, and then search for flights. So if I just have to select this particular user journey, I can always run that script. And I've done it for different websites as well. um, so yes, so in the end, it's basically a Node.js library, uses Chrome DevTools protocol, automates tests quickly by using smart selectors. So as you can see, just by using the interactive REPL and then writing the code, generating it automatically for you, and then executing it, it's actually quite fast. So you can actually start automating things from the ground quite quickly. It reduces flakiness by handling weights. As you saw, I think all my scripts, they don't have explicit weights defined. So that's actually quite helpful because I don't have to say wait for 3000 milliseconds or 4000 milliseconds. It actually handles it for me. And it comes with an interactive REPL. I think this is the most useful feature for me to use a tool, because with Python, Java, I have to write a code and then see what happens. But here I can see, okay, I can type click. It didn't work. So when I said click 15, it didn't work. I just said click 15 Eden Road and it worked. So I can actually interactively see what's happening with what I'm typing. And it's completely open source. So Thoughtworks have been involved in a lot of open source projects. So this is another open source project. And yeah, it's quite good. The documentation is quite comprehensive, and you have good support in the team. So these are some of the links that I wanted to share. Taiko, you can actually go to taiko.dev and you can then see what the features are. You can actually check out the documentation. They have a Twitter page, or they have a Spectrum. So Spectrum, any user related issues. So suppose you're not able to figure out how to use a particular function or a call or API, you can actually ask them and they are quick to respond. And they also have their GitHub page. So I've actually posted issues with the tool. So suppose you want a new feature, or you cannot do something with the tool, you can actually post an issue in GitHub, and if it's relevant and if they have already not figured out a way to do it, then they can actually create it in the future releases. I've actually reported few bugs and they've already been accepted. So that's actually quite good. So, and if anyone wants to use this presentation, it's actually hosted on a GitHub page, created again using JavaScript. So you can actually go and clone this uh, repo, and you can actually get access to this entire presentation. So yes, thank you guys. That's my email, LinkedIn address, and GitHub. So any code that I've shared, you can actually find it on the GitHub page. And yes, you can ping me, or you can send me a message on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm available to help. So thank you guys. Thank you everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Amit. That was great. Really
Question times.
Give me some extra insights to what you guys actually do. So I've got quite a good list of questions here. So I'm going to write these questions both to Amit and Zabil's. Obviously, Zabil's one of the guys behind this from ThoughtWorks. So first question comes in, and I do apologize if any of these questions have been answered as a natural course of the demo and the talk, so just let me know. But first question comes from Indrani. He says, can we have multiple actions together in one statement, like clicking an element and a drop down?
So I think you can do multiple actions. But it all depends on how you script. So it's using JavaScript. So you can actually have things. I've actually, hang on, let me show you. So these are actually multiple actions, right? Drop down to right off, select this. So there are actually multiple actions. So I am selecting a drop down which is to the right of and selecting that particular element. I can also click right into a text box or click a button. So those are multiple actions. And if I go to the documentation, okay, let me just. The documentation is actually quite simple as well. So things like what actions you can do on the browser, what actions you can do on the page, what actions you can do with selectors. So dollar is basically the selector for using XPath or CSS. And then you have multiple things. So suppose I want to click an element. The document says click particular link. So it identifies what element it is. So you can actually perform multiple actions. So yes, that's the answer.
Awesome. So next question comes from Rohit Sakar. Is there a way to encrypt or encode any secret information like password so that you can share the test script with other testers without exposing sensitive information?
So I've actually not been able to figure that out. I think you can. It's a JavaScript. So whatever way you handle your existing JavaScript coding to handle secrets, I think you can do that. You can actually declare variables at the top. So I've done that in, say, Skyscanner, this test script. So I've actually declared the variable. But whatever way you handle secrets, you can do that in Taiko as well for JavaScript. But Zabil, do you want to add anything here?
Yeah, so there are some, we mask sensitive information for sensitive fields, so it doesn't turn up in the log files. But as a standard, because Taiko just wants to focus on driving and automating the browser, secrets, what we've seen, how people handle secrets is passing it as environment variables. So you can pass values as environment variables, and because this is a Node.js ecosystem, it works fine. It can read those environment variables.
I hope that answers.
Navaneeth says, what if we need to click on an icon? How do we specify the icon or button names?
So buttons I've already shown you. Let me go back to the documentation. So you can actually identify using button. So there is actually a button, but if the button has a text, you actually don't have to say click button, then that. You just say click get started. It will identify it for you. So that's quite intuitive. Regarding images, so if images has a alt field, then it can actually use the alt, and then it can click on it. But unfortunately, most of the images, say in Google Flights or other things, I have to use XPath or CSS selector. Some images are SVG, so I'm not sure if we can click. I mean, we can click on SVGs, but we will have to use XPath. But if the image has an alt, we can use the alt and click on it. So I think that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely. Manas says, can we give the wait for events DOM loaded on any global level for all kinds of actions? Is that possible in any way?
I think global level, I think this question is for Zabil. I'll just open the wait for. Zabil, if you want to answer this question.
Yeah, there is a way to configure it at the global level too.
So wait for,
somewhere.
I'm just trying to find wait for.
You can search for config, and there's a way where you can set a few global level configurations, and one of waiting is one of them.
So you can wait for a particular thing, wait for a particular element, or wait for that element till it exists and visible. So you can do that. Another thing I found out is that, let me just show you this environment. So if you go to the environment variable and you click on, I mean, you can create a new variable. So what I've done is I've changed the Chromium path to my Chrome instance. So you can actually run Taiko with different browsers, and you can define it as the environment variable, and it will handle it for you. So that's actually quite useful as well. You can define the environment variables using some of these options here. So what I have done is Taiko browser path, but you can define other environment variables as well.
Awesome. I've got a question here from Ian. Can you use the same script with variables parameterized into the JS, for example, in a JSON string or XML?
So you can not, I mean, you cannot do it in the script, but you can do it with a test runner. So like Gauge, Mocha, Jest. So you can actually parameterize everything in that, your test runner, and then it will run in multiple modes. I haven't done it. I've done it briefly. Let me just show it. I try to do it open file. Okay. So creation spec. So this is something using Gauge. I've defined the variable here, and then I'm passing. I mean, I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with Gauge, but basically what I've done is I've defined the particular variable, parameterized it, put it in my script, and then passed it into the JavaScript function, taking that as an argument. So yes, you can parameterize and pass it, not through the script, but using the help of a test runner. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, awesome, thank you. Got a good question here from Chris. Says, can you get it to do screenshot comparison? You've shown data entry stuff, which is dead useful for a journey. What about when it comes to the end destination? You need baseline screenshot content comparison check.
So screenshots, yes, you can do. As I mentioned, there is actually a plugin. So if you go to npm.js and I've not used it myself, but let's see. So if you search for Taiko, it'll give this, and there is this Taiko Eyes. It's actually used for visual testing. So you can maybe try this plugin and then use it for visual testing and maybe do some comparisons. Hope that helps. I haven't tried it yet, but yes, it's available.
I'd like to add there's another plugin also. Taiko Eyes, I think, integrates with Apply Tools, which is an online thing for screenshot comparison. But there's a screen check plugin for Taiko, which can compare screenshots. Yeah, I think it's there. Screen check.
Screen check. Okay. Yeah. Screen check. So yeah. So it'll do screenshot compare, capture and compare as well for you.
Raj says, will it support loading a file if need be?
Oh, yes. So you can actually, I've actually done it in one of the scripts. Let me actually show it in the script itself. So here is this ob.ico, and in the Internet Heroku app, I actually load that particular file. Yes, here. So attach this to file field this. So yeah, you can do that.
Perfect. Okay. Christian says, how's the test reporting with Taiko? Is it always on terminal or can I have a HTML output? Also, does it include capturing screenshots and share it in the results?
Yes, it does. But again, as I mentioned, you will have to use it with a test runner. So your Gauge, Jest, or Mocha. So you can have this. And let me just show you. So Gauge actually does reporting for you. Sorry, get started. Viewing report. It actually creates this report format, and you can specify whether you want to see screenshots with that. So yeah, you can do it, but not through Taiko, but using Taiko with some other test runners. So it's possible. Yes.
I've got a question here from Vincent. Is it possible to capture a returned value and use it in a next step?
I think, but that's again JavaScript. So you can actually identify an element and say whether it exists or look for the value of it. Say text. Sorry guys, my computer memory is a bit low. So you can actually identify the text, say of a given element, and use it and then pass it on to the next step. But Zabil, do you want to add anything here?
Yeah, if you, I'm not very clear about how to use return values, but you can query using Taiko's API and capture the text value and then use that. And I think there was another question we probably didn't answer, which was about assertions. And that's how assertions are also done, by querying values from those APIs and using it in a custom assertion library that anyone can use.
So let's go to the terminal. And okay, this terminal is hanging. New terminal. Taiko. Okay. Open browser. Okay, I'll have to show it here and go to google.com, and then you can use something like so suppose you want to pass the URL or assert the URL, you can see. So yeah, you have options to do it, but I've not done it at the moment. So you can actually pass this value to some other command or in the next step.
Okay, great, thank you. Got a question here from Joanna. Does it have a parallelization options?
Yes, it does, but not with itself. You will have to actually use parallelization through the test runner. So you can actually run multiple scenarios in parallel. So yeah, you can do that, but yes, you will have to use a test runner for it.
Okay, great. Praneet says, how to data drive various scenarios, like using a multiple login for a web page?
So again, I think you will have to do it using this method. So you will have to mention what you want to do and script your scenario and then create it. And yes, so you can do it, say multiple logins, but you will have to create different instances maybe. So you might have to do it through your test runner.
Great. I got a question here. I do apologize if I pronounced your name correctly. Manaskarande, can we access the table contents with table cell command by using the column header?
I've actually done it. Let me say. So here, table cell row or table cell below text. So yeah, you can do that.
Good. Abhinesh says, how can we read write data from DB or Excel?
Again, I think to the test runner, but this is something, Zabil, I think you might be better able to answer.
Sure. Again, so Taiko is focused on the browser testing aspect, automating the browser. But the good part is it works with the Node.js ecosystem. So there are a lot of libraries for accessing the DB or Excel using Node.js. So the whole idea is to mix browser automation that's provided by Taiko with Node.js and use whatever library that you want for testing. Even if you want to automate some part of the browser, then use Node.js to hit some API to post some data or something, and then continue with the rest of the automation. So that it's flexible that way. So in short, everything is possible. Everything that is possible via Node.js is possible via in testing.
I think I just wanted to add, so I found this script, I've actually uploaded it and I've given the source. So this person actually used two different libraries. One is Taiko and one is Lighthouse. And then it created a Lighthouse report. So suppose I want to run a Lighthouse report on bbc.co.uk. Let me just quickly show. I think this will be the last thing. Taiko. Yeah. So just have a look here. It's opened the page. So this is just to show that it actually can work with other node libraries. So it's opened bbc.co.uk. It's did some things. It's trying to reload the page again. And wait. Then it closes. Okay, reloads again. Does something, closes. Audit.html. So if I open this, open Revealing File Explorer, and I open this. So it's actually created a Lighthouse report using a Taiko. I mean, we have used Taiko to navigate to a page and then use Lighthouse to generate a report. So yeah, you can play with it and you can connect it with different node libraries and do multiple things. So yeah.
That's your question. Got one last question from Vishali. Can we integrate with Browser Stack or any other cloud?
I will leave that to Zabil.
I can answer. So there is no integration with Browser Stack because Browser Stack is heavily focused on WebDriver and Selenium. However, by default, Taiko runs on headless mode, and it works well with headless testing. So it works well if you want to integrate it into Docker and run it on a cloud, and all of that. So that's possible, provided you run it in a Docker container that can be hosted anywhere that supports Docker.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you very much, guys. Just get off the chat. People have really enjoyed that demo and the information you're able to provide. Really, really, really appreciate it. We've got a lean coffee morning set up for tomorrow morning. That's limited spaces. We'll be talking about Taiko and other test tools in the market. We've got a chat set up for next week. As you know, we do these events weekly now. So next week, the awesome Mind Hooker from BJS is going to be doing the talk for us. The title of that is going to be "Where Did I Put My Trust?" And he's going to look at how trust, acceptance, and empowerment can affect a team or project. So please do sign up for that. It's of interest, show your support. Those links that you shared, Amit, what I'll do is, mate, I'll add those to the actual event page. So they've got them and people have got a nice reference.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you've got any questions, reach out to any of us and we'll be happy to help on that. Thank you very much, guys. Stay safe, stay sane, and see you at the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.